Because there's a handful of people actually run everything. That's true. It's provable. Not
It's all
conspiracy.
about control. To them we just cattle, numbers, battling each other while they creeping in the shadows, scheming, plotting, clocking your every move, locked in your mind, brainwashed until it's rocking. Got the population operating as they want them, symbolically mocking them, thinking nothing can stop them. So open your eyes to the lies of the evil, the poison in the minds and the lives of your people. And every time they lead you down a line to deceive you, and by then it's always too late to see through the veil that they hide behind, cause your third eye is blind. Better take a stand, we running out of time. Ain't nobody coming to save us, fuck what you had in mind. Arm yourself with the truth and jump behind the battle line. Can we turn it around? Yeah, it's possible. Divided we'll all fall, but united we're unstoppable. This is for the world, this is for the masses, attached to the strings being pulled by puppet masters. This is for the youth, searching for the proof, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some truth. This is for the ones waking up from the spell, beginning to discover themselves. Yeah, this is for the youth, searching for the truth, keep on looking for the clues, I'll provide you with some proof. This is for the world. Yeah.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of A Hitchhiker's Guide to Truth. I'm your host, James Cordiner. It's been a couple weeks since I've been on the air, and it has been a productive couple of weeks. I apologize for my absence last week. It was unexpected, but we're going to push forward, and we're going to continue with the show tonight. I have an excellent guest, absolutely fantastic guest lined up for this evening. But first, I just kind of want to say thank you to everybody out there for the kind support and the listenership and everything, and helping spread this message around. And week in and week out, the work that everyone in this community is doing has been fantastic, and I couldn't be happier to be a part of it. So we're going to tackle the housekeeping on the tail end of the show this evening, because I really want to get my guest in here right now. So without any further ado, I am joined tonight by none other than David Rodriguez. And so everyone can get to know you a little better in case they don't know you already. David, why don't you, I've already introduced you, but why don't you tell us a little about yourself? What are you up to these days? And what have you been up to in the past?
Yeah, James, great to be with you. I help parents remove their children from bad schools, and it's because I love freedom, and I was a young kid searching for the truth, like many of your listeners, and I found out that the school system was the main reason why I was kept in some corridor of deception and lies. And so, raised in a small town, and had some early business success, and then traveled, a little bit around the world. And after searching for money, then you find a kind of some deeper purpose. And I think now the purpose is intergenerational freedom, understanding that the systems that have been in place now, the medical system, the educational system, the financial system, have been dominating humanity for at least 150 years, maybe more, but as we can see, they're falling apart, and they're very desperate now. They're using coercion in a very obvious way. And so I want to be part of that solution. And so I think children are the future. We are the children. And that's kind of what I'm doing now. I worked with John Taylor Gatto as well, and helped publish his first volume of his Underground History of American Education. We have 2 more volumes coming, because I think once you understand the history of the school system, it makes it easy to remove them and to take it serious what the state is doing to your child's mind. And again, focusing on the solutions, because it is such a dark truth for me. I couldn't believe that these people got together and said these things about children and what they wanted to do and dominate. But now we can see the World Economic Forum, and everything's out in the open. So I think there's a window of opportunity to really build the world that we want to build. And the children, the teens, the young people, all of us young people out there, right? We're the ones we've been waiting for. So it's just a great honor to be with you and chat a little bit about some of the solutions and ideas and ways to empower parents and adults and children so we can get through this. I call it the rebirth of humanity. We've been in some mental enslavement for a long time, and now we're starting to realize, man, the chains are up here. So now we're breaking off our chains, rebuilding ourselves and the communities we want, the families we want, our own self. And it takes a lot of effort, at least for the adults, but the young kids are just so full of energy. So it's great to be with you. And that's a little bit about myself. I love freedom. I love peace. I love voluntary consensual relationships. And I used to maybe consider myself, I don't know, maybe a Ron Paul Republican. But then once I saw his election get stolen, I said, well, it seems like a rigged system. And so if there's any short title, it would be like a voluntarist. I just believe in voluntary consensual relationships. And I think this is the future of humanity. So I'm working a little bit just like you and your listeners, planting seeds and working at it little by little to manifest this exciting vision, exciting hope, which I do believe is inevitable to have a voluntary world.
Dude, I really like a lot. I really like a lot of the things you just said, man. That was great. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. I especially gravitated toward when you mentioned the history of public schools and the understanding of that. Like a lot of people, when they start to understand the history of public schools, you can imagine, or you can kind of envision, if you will, the end goal of this system a lot better. You can actually understand how we got to where we are today. It takes an understanding of history. It takes an understanding of the foundation of this structure to really understand how and where how we got to where we are today is what I'm really trying to say. And it's actually very it's very disturbing. It's something that I really like to warn people about when they really start to go, I don't like what. So the line of thinking, I imagine a lot of parents these days that want to remove their kids from the public school systems might have a line of thinking of like, I don't like the way that they're operating. I don't like this. How did it become this way? And then they kind of work backwards from there. And I like to at least give people a little bit of a warning, not to scare them off, but to at least just prepare them that what you're bound to discover you can find it to be very, very disturbing about the Prussian education model and where it came from and why it was created and how it was adopted into this country. I am from Massachusetts. Okay. That's one of the first places in the country where this education model was put into place. I went to a kindergarten school named Horace Mann.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a funny name when I was a child, and I was in kindergarten when I went, and I always thought it was a funny name, like Horace Mann. And come to find out, not a very good dude. I mean, from our position, not a very good dude. There are still some people out there that are a little more attached to these ways than perhaps they should be. Right now, I am actually in the process of creating a presentation for the event that we have coming up later next month, actually almost a month away exactly. And it has a little bit to do with public schools. One of the things that disturbs me the most about my experience in school and things that are still going on today is these teachers' abilities to influence even pediatricians and parents to the degree, like to such a degree that children get put on medications that mess up their minds for the rest of their lives. And it's completely disgusting, to be honest with you. That's something that happened to me. And a lot of people that I know have had similar stories, and it is very dangerous. What is your take on that before we get into more of the heart of this topic right now?
Yeah, you mentioned Horace Mann. I think that's great because after I got to read from John Taylor Gatto, and just for some of the new people, Gatto was the New York State Teacher of the Year, and he was curious about why schools have bells every 45 minutes and why everything was designed the way it was. And I got to work with him, and he told me, he said, the only reason I did this is because I wanted to know for myself what was going on here. What was going on? So like you, there's schools in California named Horace Mann School, multiple ones. And so that's one reason I reached out to John is I said, instead of seeing Horace Mann on these buildings, I want to see John Gatto on libraries, on community centers and stuff like that. And that is possible. That's what he wants to do. We started something before he passed called the Gatto Project, which is an acronym, which means get all the thinkers out of forced schools. And so I'm still in that beginning phase, but we agreed on that. And so now, instead of just edifying him, because I wanted to do a biography on his life, and he said he was raised not to brag about his achievements. He was a really like blue collar guy from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, really strong, just, integrity and honorable man. So we took it up a level, which says now it's just not about you, John. It's about this movement. It's a verb. We're turning your last name into a verb to get all the thinkers out. And so Horace Mann did go to Prussia in the 1840s, and it took him like 10 years to import it. And so Massachusetts is the first state in the Union to have the compulsory attendance school model. And that's, I think, the whole foundation of everything. If mom and dad, if this is the only thing you get out of the conversation is a compulsory learning school, might as well be called a day prison, because nowhere else on earth are you forced under threat of fine or imprisonment to be somewhere except jail. You have choice in colleges and jobs, all of that, relationships, except for children age 6 to age 18, and they're mandated, and it's just a diabolical system. So yeah, Horace Mann was the guy, the puppet or figurehead to bring it over. And ultimately, coercion ruins learning, and that's one of the biggest takeaways as well. Learning is fun. How did you learn to walk and talk? Not with a compulsory learning environment, not with grades, not with tests, with encouragement, with enthusiasm and support. And you fell down, try again. Oh no, you say apple or daddy, mama, yay, you did it. So that mind, that encouragement from the baby, it's like, yes, the baby's looking to your eyes. That's the same thing for the 6-year-old to the 10-year-old. And of course, ultimately, young men want to become men and young women want to become women. And so speaking that life into them from a young age, I think is very important. And it is incredible. John Gatto's work, also Charlotte Iserbyt did a great job. Anthony Sutton did a great job conveying, or I should say, relating the private or secret society at Yale, Skull and Bones, with those people, and how that was also related, because as all tyrants know, if you control the minds of children, you control the minds of the voters and the adult populace later. And I'll start off with this quote from Johann Fichte, because Johann Fichte was a philosopher in Prussia in the early 1800s. And then this is his quote. There had been a battle, the Battle of Jena, Jena, and they lost. And so they brought the thinkers together and said, man, how did we lose to Napoleon? And this is what Johann Fichte said, addresses to the German nation, if you want to look up the direct source. He said, quote, education should aim at destroying free will, so that after pupils are thus schooled, they will be incapable throughout the rest of their lives of thinking or acting otherwise than as their schoolmasters would have wished. When the technique has been perfected, every government that has been in charge of education for more than one generation will be able to control its subjects securely without the need of armies or policemen. And so you can see this what's happened the last 2.5, 3 years with the whole scamdemic, where they don't even need police out there. They have the Karens and the Darrens out there saying, put your mask on and doing all these things. And it's happened in our lifetime. So this is kind of the red flag mom and dad out there, to really take it serious of the solutions that are required from you as the bringer of life, as such a beautiful and sacred and honorable position to raise a young man, a young woman. And it just takes one champion to change the world. Lysander Spooner changed the world 150 years ago with his writings, with his thinking. Murray Rothbard, Ludwig von Mises, Gandhi, so we are those things. Your children are those ones. And I think that's one of the big takeaways too, is that you don't have to change the whole world, but one powerful woman or man or teenager can make a huge difference. And then I mentioned intergenerational freedom earlier, is that this whole school system has been going on for over 100 years. It's slowly crept up. And so, of course, you had Etienne de la Boétie or Howard Lichtman, and I got that from intergenerational organized crime is the government. And so I want to find the solution, and that is intergenerational freedom, and that is the transfer of the knowledge of the truth of self-ownership and non-aggression to the young people around us. And I think homeschooling is one of the best ways to do that.
I'm happy that you mentioned Murray Rothbard because he has an excellent book. I believe the title is Education, Free and Coercive. I believe that's the title of the book, and it's basically a condensed history of the public education model, and it goes over the way that it was adopted in the United States quite well. If I want to plug my own show, go to the RSS feed. A couple years ago, I actually read part of that book on the air, so you can check it out there, or just read it for yourself if you don't want to hear me speak about it. But I'm really glad that you brought up Murray Rothbard for that reason, and and even Johann Fichte, because people think that's the guy that's like really trying to hit it home with why that education model was created over there where we adopted it from. So it's important to really understand these people and what their goals were, so we can kind of again see how we got to where we are today, and bringing up the fact that something that honestly disgusts me a lot when I hear about when I hear about public school teachers. And I don't want to trash on them too much, because I really do believe that a lot of the people that are doing those jobs, they genuinely believe that they're doing good things. And I think that is their motivation, is to do good things. I, however, think that once they get placed in the system, those good things kind of go out the window. Certain things become, really out of their control, and they're kind of not able to do those good things that they were really hoping to do. So I don't want to be sitting here, teacher bashing or whatever. But there is one thing that I really just makes me really uncomfortable when they start talking about how that the kids that are in those classrooms are their kids. They use language like that, and it makes me want to throw up. Because it's not, these kids aren't those, they're not the teacher's kids. They're the parents' kids. And it's about, like you said, empowering the parents to have the confidence to be able to assume responsibility for the life that they brought into this world, instead of abdicating that responsibility onto a complete and utterly dysfunct and corrupt system.
Yes.
And it's until we really drive that point home into people, I do think that is among some of the most important activism. So I want to, again, thank you for that, because we're not going to see great change in the future if we don't stop acting the same way that got us here. And part of that is what you mentioned about one, maybe two generations down the road is all they need. And that's where we are. We're like third or fourth, maybe fifth generation in. So that time has come and gone. So we can really wake up to this thanks to John Taylor Gatto is a hero. But before we go any further, that man was a hero. And and his legacy, he is immortalized through his legacy and the work that he did to wake people up to the corrupt and dysfunct nature of the public education system. And for that, he will forever, in my mind, be a hero. He's one of mine. Yeah. And thank you for, working with him and continuing that work, because it is seriously some of the most important activism that could ever take place. These are our kids. It's
us. Yeah. We went to the public school. At least I did.
I did.
And so,
Barely.
so I was, Right.
I dropped
And
out
so,
in 8th grade. They held me
oh,
back twice. Yeah. I barely spent,
congratulations, man.
yeah,
Yeah.
well, in 9th grade, but I never completed 9th grade. So, and they held me back twice because I was just not having it. I couldn't do it. I've always had a problem. Like these are the children's first experience of outside authority. Like I always reinforce the idea within my children that hey, mommy and daddy, we're your mom and dad. Like, we're going to tell you how to do things. We're going to ask you to do things. And sometimes when push comes to shove, we're going to just tell you what to do. We're the only two people that you really should listen to. Other than that, like, maybe, ask some questions, of course, ask us all the questions that you want, of course. But you should really be hesitant to really go and blindly do what other people tell you to do. And of course I boil it down to more of a 5-year-old understanding of all that good stuff. But, when it comes to outside authority, public school teachers are the first ones that people, are exposed to. How many times, like, everyone's going to be exposed to violence in sometime in their lives. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. That's just the world we live in right now. But unfortunately, the most of the people are exposed to violence for the first time in the public school system. And it's always a classmate. Most of the time, it's a classmate. The other half of the time, it's one of the teachers doing something like, deception, lying, or sometimes even, unfortunately, there's physical abuse going from teachers to students. They've got pictures of or video camera footage of a teacher dragging a kid with learning disabilities or autism, like, down the hall by their head or their collar of their shirt, but they're on the ground being dragged on the ground. Like, what the hell is that? But, with that exposure to authority, it never sat right with me personally. Like, I've told the story on the show a million times, but I'll tell it to you because you've never heard it, I'm assuming. But I was in, I think, kindergarten or 1st grade, or preschool, whatever it was. It was very, very young. And they have the reading mat and they have the names on duct tape. That's how they did it back then. You sit on where your name is, you go over there and you sit there and you listen to story time. And I wanted to sit down next to this, girl, I guess I was probably having a crush on or whatever. And I wanted to sit down next to her. And the teacher was like, no, you have to sit across the mat. And I was just like, but I'm going to sit down. Where does it matter? Why does it matter where I sit? I'm still going to sit down and listen to your story. I want to hear about the hungry caterpillar. Trust me, I do. But I just want to sit down over here. Like, I want to be the cool kid. And it just never made sense to me. Like, why can't I sit here? Why do I have to? That doesn't make what? So it was always a question in my mind about this type of authority. It never sat right with me. So what I wanted to ask you, but you kind of already covered it, about, like, your connection to John Taylor Gatto. How did you meet him? And, what was it like being, like, working with him? Because he has taught me so much. And Richard Grove's, what was it? The
Ultimate history lesson.
Yes. His 5-hour interview with John Taylor Gatto. It's just like, the first time I ever saw that, I was just gravitated right to Gatto. And, I wanted to know more about him, but I also want to know more about techniques to really kind of easing your way into talking to parents. You already kind of covered the Gatto stuff a little bit, but I want to hear, like, what you do and how you approach talking to parents about these situations going on in public schools, and more just your techniques and how you do these things.
Yeah. So I learned so much from Gatto as well, and Richard Grove and his team did phenomenal to immortalize John. So many quotes from Gatto. One is, nobody can educate you except yourself. So, somebody said, oh, John, you're such a great educator. And he says, well, I thank you for saying that, but, like, I'm not really an educator, because after you teach for so long and you realize all you can do is deliver information, it's up to the student to grab it. He also has another great quote, which says that it's not difficult to teach a child that doesn't want to learn. It's impossible. Meaning, if your child doesn't want to learn, what good does it do to force them? So you kind of have to bring them in. And the word education comes from the root of educo, which means to draw from within, to elicit. And so this is where Buckminster Fuller and even Pablo Picasso have great quotes, which is, the child's a born genius. The problem is they get de-genius trying to please their teachers and please their parents. Whereas Picasso, every child's a born artist, and they lose that artistry as they become adults. So I do believe in that genius, because I felt that as a kid, and I felt the suppression towards me, just like you did. Like, I want to sit down right here, but why does it matter where on the carpet I sit? This is freaking ridiculous. And so complete asinine. And so this is what Gatto did a great job. He said schooling and education are completely separate. And so what the school system does, the forced school system, as you call it, the government monopoly compulsory school system, is far away from education, because education is what we're doing right now. We are having a conversation. We are learning. We are connecting as humans. We're not doing this for grades. We're not doing this for a test. We're doing this out of our own volition, to make a difference, to learn, to become better friends, and maybe help some people. But this is not to be graded and to be evaluated by a total stranger. Also, he says children need adventure, explorations, and experience more than they need algebra. So I've never needed algebra in my life that I can remember, and we don't need it. Now we have these devices. Now we got, the Library of Alexandria in our pocket, basically. And so we're overwhelmed with information. And now we need to learn how to concentrate. Now we need to learn how to ignore certain information and focus on our goals, on our dreams. And that's what I start with parents when I do consulting with homeschooling, is, mom and dad, what do you desire for your child? Let's get back to basics, because I'm sure you probably never had that conversation of, what do you desire for your child? Oh, good grades and college. Well, colleges are, again, putting this woke ideology, leftist, communist, super status, United Nations, global climate change crisis, propaganda into most all universities, even the elite universities, which are just, figurehead brands for, these hyper wealthy predator psychopaths to raise the next generation. They know it's about intergenerational enslavement. And so this is where we come in with intergenerational freedom. So one is, let them know what education is. In my definition, education is what one does to themselves to create a good life. And we all want our children to be healthy, productive, happy. And that's about it, right? Once our kids are healthy, happy, and productive, having a great life, it doesn't matter if they're great garbage men or artists or computer people or business people or whoever. They're electricians and plumbers. They can be whatever they want. But those are the general criteria that we find. And so if that's the criteria, then the way to get there is through experiences, adventures, learnings. So that's what I start with. And then number two is homeschooling itself. One of my goals is to redefine homeschooling. And I've made it clear for me, because I have to, and I'll give them to you here in a second, the 4 phases of homeschooling. But the definition of homeschooling is when a leader creates an atmosphere where personalized learning can occur. So mom and dad out there, your role as a homeschool leader is to create that atmosphere where your son or daughter can have personalized learning. Again, stealing from Gatto here, he says, an education should be as unique as your fingerprint. So just like your son and daughter is very unique and different from each other, we're all different and unique. The cultures, the languages, the genetics, the expression, the epigenetics, everything, memory, everything. So it should be customized, but we don't expect you to be a teacher, mom and dad. I invite you to consider looking at yourself like a learning partner or a facilitator, a guide, a coach, something like, you're on the same team as your child, but you're not necessarily, teacher of, okay, math time is homeschooling at 10 a.m. and now it's language arts. That's called school at home, the first phase of homeschooling. The second phase is called deschooling. This is where you let your son or daughter totally decompress from a compulsory learning environment. So just like if you have a bottle of soda, you shake it up. Before you can drink the soda, you gotta open it up and let all that pressure release. The compulsory learning environment is a pressurized environment, so you have to let them be free. So the rule of thumb is that for every year they're in a compulsory environment, you want to give them a month of total freedom. So let's say you have a fifth grader and they've been in school for 5 years, then you want to give them 5 months to decompress, to get back to homeostasis, to connect to who they are. And if they want to sleep all day, let them sleep. If they want to play video games all day, let them play video games. That way they can come back to earth after being, in the stratosphere of tests and grades and, getting permission to urinate and defecate and get a drink of water. It's like, what is this? You never have to have that happen again. So that's deschooling. Phase 2, and then phase 3 is homeschooling itself. And I gave you that definition. And then the apex of learning, in my opinion, is 100% self-directed learning. Some people call it unschooling. This is kind of like where we're at now. We're not doing it for grades. We're doing it for our own fulfillment. We're doing it because we want to. And then we can change. If I'm studying this subject, I don't want to study anymore, I want to go over here, we can change. And that's what this life is about. One of the best titles to have in life is a learner. Consider yourself a learner, mom and dad. You're always learning. And the sad thing about the school system that you said, and to kind of take a little digression here, my mom was a public school teacher for 20 years, and I have family members who are public school teachers who are loving, sweet people. My mom is an awesome lady and very loving, but when you are in a cog in this system, you can't change it. So you're just a deliverer of the curriculum. And if you go to the origin story of the word pedagogue or pedagogy, it says the master creates the curriculum, the pedagogue hammers it in. So unfortunately, these teachers are like, yeah, I'm going to inspire kids. No, you're going to deliver the curriculum. What used to come from the state level, now it's basically coming from the national centralized level. And this is why good people, good teachers quit in the first 3 to 5 years. So the apex is self-directed learning, where your own motivation is driving you. And then mom and dad, our challenge is that you went to the public school system or even a private school. Sometimes they just replicate the public school model. So you were taught, I was taught that somebody has to give us an assignment and then we go deliver that, and then they grade us and evaluate us. Yay, that's, I'm educated. I have a master's or a PhD or whatever it is. No, this is all a scam to make you be a subordinate slave, because what they're afraid of is what's happening right now is that people like your listeners and you and I and your children and everyone listener, we're finding our power again. We're finding that, wow, I can set an intention. I can express my goals. I can persist. I can be self-disciplined. I can have good health. And I don't need permission from the state. I don't need permission from Mrs. Jones or Mrs. Smith or whatever these teachers are. God bless these teachers, but it's a reprogramming of what is a schooling, what is an education. I gave the definition for education, what you do to yourself to create a good life, and then schooling is what somebody else does to you to benefit their organization. So just imagine that McDonald's was in charge of the school system. What would that school look like? Well, you'd walk in, there'd be a big flag with an M on it, the red and the yellow M, and you would pledge allegiance to the M, and you'd see the founders on the wall, and you would learn how good the preservatives are in the fries. And if you graduate from McDonald's high school, you might be able to work at a McDonald's one day, but if you're really lucky, you can own a McDonald's and be a McDonald's franchisee, because this is what they do. Everybody is recruiting. The NFL recruits, the state recruits, the military. This is why the military is at the high schools recruiting to send the poor people in a rich country to go kill the poor people in a poor country, while I don't call them elites any longer, James. They are hyper wealthy predator psychopaths, and I respect their humanity, but what they're doing, they actually are anti-elite. They are below what just a normal human is, because they have intentions to harm, and they could do it without doing, let's say, the fluoride in the water, the chemtrails, these sex ed curriculum where you can mutilate your genitals. If you guys haven't seen a documentary called What is a Woman, by Matt Walsh, very powerful, showing that from the lowest level, the pediatricians, probably well-meaning people, but they haven't learned the truth about self-ownership and non-aggression and personal responsibility. And so again, it all goes back to the state of this indoctrination. And the guy asks her, so what's a woman? And the woman is there, and she says, well, I'm non-binary, and I don't know what a woman is because I'm not a woman, even though she has a vagina in her pants. God bless her. It's just like, so they're attacking truth, James, and the children are the ones who are trusting. They're naive and they are innocent. And so if you can look down inside your pants and have a penis and say, I'm a girl, now they can just put anything else on top of you. And that's what they're doing. They're attacking truth, which is directly related to justice. And so now it's not going to be easy to find justice if they can reword and redefine all these things. So this is another reason that parents are removing their children out of these schools in droves. Some of the numbers show it's doubled in the last 2 years. Some areas it showed it's tripled. And I believe it is just going to continue to escalate and increase due to these conversations, my work, other people's work out there, where they're starting to see it is not acceptable what's happening in these schools. And as Gatto said, all education reform is a waste of time, energy, and resources. You're not going to reform a $700 billion industry that is feeding the uniform business, the bus manufacturers, the architects, the trash business, the books, the backpacks, uniforms, computers, software. I mean, it's a giant cash cow. It's not just going to go away by, please, masters, stop what you're doing. In fact, in Shasta County, this is really positive news. I just learned about the last week, and I put it on my Education Options TV YouTube channel. Del Bigtree reported that Shasta County last year, October 2021, they had a walkout of their public schools countywide. 45% of the students did not go to school. And so he said, I wonder what impact that had. His lawyers did a FOIA request. They got the internal memos and letters. What happened was the 25 superintendents in that county sent letters to the governor and the senators and all these guys who are trying to do the forced COVID injection. And they said, hey, if you do this injection, we're probably going to lose up to 70 or 80% of our students. It's going to loss of money. It's going to restructure our districts. Please don't do it. So, and that was one of the greatest things, because that is part of the Gatto strategy, which is get all the thinkers out, stop begging permission from slave masters to be free, but just vote with your feet and stop participating in your child's own indoctrination. And so anyways, these are some of the strategies I use to help launch homeschooling mothers and fathers into this scary world where if you went to public school, it is scary. But if you start to understand what is education, what is homeschooling, what do you desire for your child, now you have some kind of direction that you can go. And it also helps that there's 4 million plus homeschoolers in this country, and it's just going to get more. I think we're living the greatest time for homeschooling, other than maybe 2 or 3 decades ago when it was illegal and the parents had to rise up for their religious freedom. But now it's going to be a complete exodus, and I'm very optimistic. But again, if we're dealing with a mega business enterprise and the guys at the top aren't necessarily moral or honest people, so I think everything's on the table, but they're outnumbered, and it's just a matter of us organizing, getting clear on the goals, having a big dream, a big vision, and start thinking intergenerationally. And I think there is a bright future for the children.
Absolutely, there is, and it's a persistence that's required to keep the footing that we've gained, and to keep going and spreading this message. Because if we stop, then the message dies, and people might fall back asleep to all of these things. The egregious things that they've done over the past couple of years is just straight up in your face claims of ownership of your children. Yeah, and it's dude, no one has claim of ownership over your children. Like that's something that everyone agreed on a while back, but like it was obfuscated that these people had good intentions, and it was this. It's a way for both parents to go to work and to make money and to raise taxes and to do all like it's just a one. It's just sometimes a fallacy isn't a fallacy. Sometimes the slippery slope is based in truth, and that makes it not a fallacy. So it is a slippery slope kind of situation. Alliteration aside, it just creates this complete and utter chaotic and confused mess when it comes down to it, because it creates a dependency. Like it's I'm going on a tangent. I apologize. In my opinion, a lot of the unschooling that needs to be done has to be done by the parents onto themselves, because we're
Correct.
not going to create a better world, and we're not going to step away from the world that this system has created if we keep doing the same things that they do. Even if we're doing it on our own, we have to change it up. We can't do the same thing. Just because you're homeschooling doesn't mean you do the same thing that they did in the public schools. Like, yes, you want to have an understanding of math. You want to be able to read. You want to be able, understand, because these things are correlated in the universe itself. They're a part of nature. Nature is made of numbers. So math is everywhere. No matter where you go, you're going to need to know how to do math. Like, I get it, whatever. But there's redundancies in the public school system all over the place. Things that they waste your fucking time with. Excuse my language, but it's necessary. A little parrhesia.
Yes.
But like they just
Yes.
waste your time, and it's just to go, look what we made them do. That's what it's there for. Like, I can't believe they're actually doing this. And it's
Right.
like it's useless information. A lot of the times it's just useless. And the parts that they put up as not useless, most of the time it's a lie. When they're telling about American history, world history, a lot of the times it's a lie. It's just a straight up lie. So we're in the habit tonight of quoting John Taylor Gatto, and I remembered something that he said, and I wrote it down, and I wanted to read it. John Taylor Gatto at one point was asked, he actually said, "I don't like children, I like people, and what are children but small people?" And it's like to me, it was like just a brilliant way of putting it. When it's like, look, as a parent, I can tell you firsthand that the best results that I've gotten is when I treat my son, because he's the one that speaks English right now, when I treat my son like my equal, where I'm not looking down upon him, and where maybe I get down on his level, if my knees aren't hurting that day. And because my knees hurt a lot, I'm an old skateboarder, and I hop in and out of a garbage truck like 100 times a day. So I have bad knees. Anyways, I speak to him like he's my equal. I just talk to him like a human being. I don't go, "Hey, buddy." Like sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, bud, what's up?" But I'm not like, "Oh, you baby," all this goo goo gaga BS that people still do to 5-year-olds. It's kind of weird in my opinion. But what do you have to say about that? About the amount of unschooling that parents have to put themselves through?
That's correct, because they went through the system as well, and the system has worked effectively on so many of us that many adults have never read another book after high school. It was such torture. So they just said, screw books, there's nothing in there, I'm just gonna make money, and that's it. Whereas the secrets are in the books. There's a book called Think and Grow Rich, and it's from the 1930s, and this guy interviewed successful people, and he deduced a method of achievement. So you can get this book for $8 and see what some of the big tycoons of old, what they said about self-suggestion, desire, persistence, self-discipline, some of these things. And I have a business degree, right, for some good business university. Nobody ever recommended that book, because college is a business and they're not there to empower you. I was trained to be an employee, but the truth is that we're all CEOs of our life. We are all the kings and queens of our own body. And this thing called consciousness, this thing called breath and life is so special. it's almost too special to talk about it, because then we start talking about the real things of a creator or nature or something. But the fact that we are here to converse in this particular language of English, but there's, thousands of language out there, we can convey meaning. And this is why the whole COVID thing was so diabolical, because there's only two emergencies in life, two things to get really urgent about. If you're bleeding, that's an emergency. And if you can't breathe, that's an emergency. So here people are doing this, and I can't breathe with that thing on. I feel a little bit claustrophobic and these kind of things. And so when other people are telling you to do that, and I started to realize that compassion. So for you mom and dad out there, yes, you got to unschool or de-school the most, just like I had to. And I will continue, because I can feel the programs that are trying to hold me down. My goals and dreams are out here, but then there's things that are stopping me. But these people out there, I would literally, I say, I have a medical exemption, I have a religious exemption, I can't breathe with it on. And these people are like, no, you have to do this. And you're like, if the mask works, why do I need to wear one? You got one, same thing for the jab. If the jab works, you got one, right? Why do I need to? Yeah. So this is how there's no critical thinking going on. These are cult members, God bless them, and they're in a trance, and they're in hypnosis. And so if they can't see what's going on after these 2.5 years, I'm afraid that they may never. So I'm just kind of stay away from these people, help raise the next generation of superstars like your children and your listeners, who realize, what? This child is a genius, and they might, poop in their pants sometimes, or they might spill stuff, they might break things, but they have so much potential, and I'm not going to be the bottleneck in their development. I'm going to let them be free. And one of the great Gatto lessons is that there'll be 50 defining experiences in your childhood that will really shape your life. And you never know which one is going to be the big one. So let your children have as many experiences, even dangerous ones. Of course, not letting them run across the road when they're 5, but sure. Like, let them climb a little tree. Let them test their limits. Let them see what's going on, because they want to know. And we have to go until we hit our limits. And then we're like, okay, there's my limit. That's where I got to strategize how to level up, or, bypass or go transcend that problem. And then you start to actually think and contemplate and use our mind rather than being an automaton. And that's one of the other concerns is, with these devices, the parents are concerned about screen time. It's like, well, yeah, there's a lot of subconscious programming, but you got to choose what is your goal for your child, because when they're 16, 18, 22, at some point, they're going to leave your house, and they're probably never going to move back again. So you've got this window, call it 18 years, where you can be planting seeds, recommending books, doing experiences, having fun, and
gaining trust.
Your role as a parent, in my belief, is to demonstrate unconditional love, so they know that mom and dad love them no matter what they do, and develop trust, so they know mom and dad is always going to be there, even if they fuck up really bad, because you need this safe nest where you can come. And that was why I was so fortunate, because I made a lot of mistakes in my life, but I knew that my parents loved me and they did the best that they could with me. But there was always like, you're a human, we're all humans. And then I start to get deeper with them, speak truth. Many of us have had near-death experiences, right? Where then we come back and we're like, I can't believe I'm alive. I got to tell you something, because before I pass, this might be my last day. I never know. So then you start to get in the present moment with your parents and with your loved ones. And now it's about sharing love with them. And again, as you said, building trust. But then it's like, from trust and from love, now we can build something great. And that is the cycle of life. You take care of your children, and then we get older, and if our parents are alive, then we take care of our parents. And it's just this weird, unbelievable, beautiful thing that you don't see until you get a few decades under the belt, and you're like, wow, this is incredible to be a human. Why was I compelled for 12 years in this ridiculous environment that nobody cared if I get a college degree or a diploma? In some of my apprenticeship consulting, trying to connect teenagers with mentors, I help them understand that these mentors are looking for people that are coachable, a team player, they're humble, they're willing to learn, they're willing to try, they're willing to serve. And then in exchange for giving that to the mentor, they're going to give you knowledge. But you can't come in there arrogant, Mr. Know-it-all, and expect somebody to help you. You got to really lower yourself, use some humility, and acknowledge what Socrates and Einstein and Voltaire all said in one way. There's one thing that we know, and that's that we know nothing. Or every genius admits one thing, that he or she knows nothing. So this mystery of life, and Buckminster Fuller talked about it too, is really important to acknowledge our existence and how we got here and what we're doing and where we're going. So this is all omitted from the government compulsory school system, because that cracks open the religion of statism. They're trying to get rid of God, in my opinion, so that God is out and statism is in. And the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights, if you ever read it, says your human rights are what the United Nations says they are. Whereas the Declaration of Independence, although it's a statist document, at least said you have unalienable rights from the creator of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So unalienable or unalienable, however you want to say it, they come from God or source or nature, but not from the government. So here's creator, here's humans, and here's government. And so government wants to take the top position. And because of your show and many shows like this, where people are having an honest conversation of about where does authority come from, who owns your body, who owns my body, and how can you delegate a right that you don't have, and how are you trying to make me bound to a contract I never agreed to? Yeah. Right? Some of the Lysander Spooner and Larkin Rose stuff, these guys have been crushing it. And it's like, yeah, that's the truth. What is going on here? So my belief here is that just like the monarchy failed and then it evolved to the constitutional republic, the constitutional republic statism is failing, and it will eventually go, and we're in that birthing process of individual self-ownership. It will be self-evident, and then these predators will have nothing to stand on except violence. So hopefully it doesn't get to violence, but the main thing is that the homeschooling method and process is the future, is the present. It is one of the most exciting things. And I got to say this. So as a principal at Valor Academy, I do accelerated graduations, and I teach the parents, and I mention to the teens, there's two concepts which I promote here. One is the world is the classroom. We're always in session. It's always going on everywhere. It's not just in a building, okay? It could be outside of the ocean or wherever. And then number two is anything and anybody you can learn from can be a teacher. So these two concepts really open up the, as Gatto would call, the open source learning model. And it's a redefining of education, a redefining of what we're trying to do here. And back to your point about deschooling mom and dad, that is what it is. And there's no shame in it. I'm deschooling myself as well. But to have this conversation about what is it that we're intending to do, what do we envision doing, and that is pursuing success or attracting success. And then you got to have a definition of success. And I'll give you mine, and maybe you can give me yours, or share some audience members would like to put it in the comments.
Sure.
Success is peace of mind, which is a direct result in self-satisfaction and knowing you made the effort to become your best. Got that from John Wooden, the great coach. And in short, it's doing your best. Art Williams said, all you can do is all you can do, but all you can do is enough. And then Earl Nightingale said, success is progress towards a worthy goal or a worthy ideal. So these are all champions from, sometimes a few decades ago or earlier. But these are the conversations, because getting a college degree, that's not really success, in my opinion. That's nice. It's a cool thing. But what could you have done with 4 or 6 years of your life if you didn't put it to memorizing information that you can Google and writing papers that no one really cares about, and dancing like you're like a frog trying to do the tap hat, hey, choose me, pick me. We're now in a situation where we choose ourselves. I choose me, and I can tell just talking with you, James, you choose you. And this is what we're teaching our children. I choose you. and you choose you because this is your life. He says, son and daughter, one day you are going to have to choose what you do with your life. And as a parent, it's like, what do we want them to be? Happy, independent, productive, and that all comes from responsibility. So we want to let them take on responsibility, even if it's washing the dishes or mowing the lawn and they do a terrible job. Let them try and fail and then say, hey, I got some feedback for you. If you're open to some feedback, I'd like to give you some feedback on your dishwashing or
Right.
the mowing. Okay. And say, hey, I can see you want to acknowledge what they did right and say, you know what, there's some room for improvement here. And then that way they can be open. Oh yeah. And they can acknowledge, I don't know everything. I'm still learning. I make mistakes. Versus in school, if you get 50% or 60%, you get a D or an F, and that's like really bad. But in the business world, if you have 50% success on your business or you have 50% success on your sales, you are a legend. Or in professional sports, if you have a 300% batting average in baseball, you are in the Hall of Fame. That's a 30%.
Yeah.
So all these numbers are completely backwards. So it's like these, what is it, like a crystal ball? You look at the crystal ball and it's like everything's inverted. And so in the compulsory school environment, everything's inverted. So when you step out, certain things don't seem the way they are for 12 years. And definitely as parents, it's like, okay, take off the lenses of schooling and put on the lenses of education, which is the world is the classroom. We're always learning. You can't turn off learning. There was a great woman that she said in her group, she would have like a no learning day. It was like mocking the school system, right? They're like, okay, today's no learning day, in our homeschool. And the joke is you can't not learn. You're always learning, even if it's sleeping and meditating or having fun playing, learning a skill, playing a video game or, writing. It's always learning, even if you're just in your own mind, doing mental imagery. Your brain is always working, and especially young children, they have the plasticity component of their brain, and they're always just absorbing all this information. So mom and dad, you cannot ruin the learning environment unless you start at the first phase of bring school at home, but pretty soon you'll burn out, and then eventually you'll get to D-school and then homeschool, and then eventually 100% self-directed learning.
Wow. I was told you could go, and you have not let me down. So thank you. I would like to start by addressing what you mentioned about the cult. You said it's a cult, and it's a cult of abuse. And what that does is it creates an abuse victim cycle. And the people that are the victims of one person's abuse go on to abuse another person because they feel downtrodden or disenfranchised or, they have no power or self-worth because of the abuse that they've experienced. So they go turn around and abuse others. This cycle puts it into people's heads because I suffered. This is their idea. Because I suffered or I did something that was unpleasant. Other people need to go and do that same thing that's unpleasant or sufferable. So I'd like to talk. I would like to at least address that came to mind. And what you mentioned about risk exposure is absolutely the pinnacle of somebody actually self-actualizing and making sure that they know their surroundings, the environment that they're in, their own capabilities. This is what I mean. And risk exposure leads to failure. And with each failure, there is an opportunity to learn more and to become better. So why wouldn't we want that? The idea of wrapping children in bubble wrap and sending them out into the world is a setup for a failure that is just not one that you can learn from, because it creates victimhood. And that's the idea, to step away from victimhood, because victimhood leads to the dependency issues that have created such an abusive state of life and of government. So you asked me to give a crack at defining success. I would define success as follows. It happens on a daily basis. Success happens on a daily basis. That's how you measure. That's the measurement of success. It comes at the end of the day. And what is that measurement consist of? Well, it consists of how much harm did you cause behind you throughout that day. And if that number is, if you're causing the least amount of harm as possible, then you've had a pretty successful day. We can't expect to be at zero. I think that's a little bit too much right now in the world. I don't want to set my expectations so high to tell people that they should be causing absolutely zero harm, because, you know, we have lifestyles and diets and things and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. But if you can reduce that number, if you can bring it down, if you can consciously make decisions that don't result in the harm of other sentient beings or other human beings, if we want to start at human beings, I have no problem with that. But if we can consciously make decisions that reduce the amount of harm that we're causing to our fellow person, then we've had a pretty successful day. And so, yeah, that's where I'm at so far with all of this. You know, I really like to address the whole like the abusive aspect of all of this stuff, because of the different claims of ownership that they take upon children in the public school systems, and the direction that they put people in. It's almost as if they, like you said about automatons and everything like that. It creates a person that doesn't even know themselves. So when they have the downtime, they're lost. They're lost without it. They're lost without the system. It's like they're you know, the music video for Pink Floyd's The Wall comes to mind, when the children are on the conveyor belt and they go in as individuals and they come out the meat grinder all wearing the same mask. You know, they all have the same face and everything. It kind of makes me think about the whole, you know, square peg round hole analogy, and it also makes me think about the one size fits all aspect or approach of a lot of the public education, public school, you know, government school. Maybe we should call it what it is. Stop euphemizing it. Stop making it sound better. It's government indoctrination, really.
Yep.
It's an indoctrination into the state and into their way of life. And honestly, people out there that oppose this kind of speech that David and I are sharing tonight, I mean, take a look around, and just as much of a painful process as it might be, we're not going to get anywhere until we start being absolutely honest about how these things are going down. And you tell me if it's, you know, a success, you know, and then if you think that it is, I'm going to start questioning your motives. But that's just me. So, I mean, you know, I digress on that part, but
no, those are great points. Yeah. A lot of suffering is happening, and I'm not sure why the children are the targets, other than they're very easy to be targeted. And that's exactly more, this is more of my motivation, because I remember being an 8-year-old and feeling the strangeness around me. And I grew up in a small town, so at least the teachers were known by my parents. But imagine being in a factory school with 2,000 or 3,000 kids in it, in an urban environment. Now you feel like you're just a number, and it's really a factory system. And every year, the United States graduates about 3 million teenagers, I would say 18-year-olds, from this day prison. And so, as you call it, the government school, I call it a day prison. That's the title of the Underground History of American Education by Gatto, which is an intimate investigation into the prison of modern schooling. And it really is that. So this is part of the goal, is to have that dialogue so parents can realize, wow, I'm taking my kids to prison. That's what I'm doing. I have a client in Texas, and she said the parents are no longer allowed to walk their children to class unless they're vaccinated. And she's like, they're stopping them at the front door, handing the child to teachers, and they're walking so that they can't go into school. So, and eventually, this is what it's all about, is they want to totally rip your child away from you so that you can't even go to school. They want to, and if you, mom and dad out there, would agree to a compulsory school at age 5 or 4, or directly out of your birth canal, the state would do it. The only thing stopping them right now is your tolerance of it. And they move slow. It's called boiling the frog, or incrementalism. They don't want to grab too much because it wakes up too many people, but now the information is getting out. And just like you mentioned, James, more people are calling it the government school or the government indoctrination program, and the doctrine of the state is we are in charge of you, and you will do what we say or we will hurt you. And unfortunately, that is basically tyranny. That is, the state is just a tool of tyranny, and they wrap it up in a flag. And again, this is not to defecate on the flag, but I was raised Americana. You know, I'd play sports and they would play the national anthem and I'd get my helmet and I'm ready to go play sports, Yahoo. And then I found out later, of course, Aaron Russo and Freedom to Fascism, and then some of the information in Howard's book. Wow, they're using the flag as a brand. America is a brand like Nike and Starbucks, and they're using it against you so that you feel obligated, that you have to stand, and you're not pledging allegiance to truth, to honesty, to compassion, to your faith, to your children, to love, to humility, forgiveness. You're pledging allegiance to the republic for which it stands, to the state, and they're doing this in schools. So maybe we can change and not pledge allegiance to something that is diabolical and murderous. And you might have seen the study at the University of Hawaii, Democide, which proved that government is the most murderous organization in history, now killing over, I think it's 200 million in the last 100 or 120 years. And that's not including war, you know, starvation and all these other things.
Yeah.
So as Carlin said, and this is back to the comedy aspect of it, the art, the parrhesia perhaps, because it's so dark and so depressing that we can go all the way down and say what's wrong, but you and I are leaders, your parents are listening, you are the leaders. And so we create solutions and we focus on what can we do to take action, what we can do to build some positive results. And one is comedy. And if you haven't seen the Carlin special on HBO, I recommend part 2. He goes through his thought process. He used to be, hey, mainstream, you know, the Tonight Show, you know, with the mainstream, I forgot, Johnny Carson, right?
Right.
And then later, he went through his decline with drugs and he stayed together with his wife. Amazing story of victory. He said, I had to find my voice. And he said, I wanted to talk about the real stuff that really, you know, made me mad. And he did. And that's why George Carlin is still relevant, because he put it on media and it was produced well. And he's a great writer and a great performer. But then if you haven't seen Jim Brewer's recent comedy in the last year, oh man, somebody had to say it. Very powerful. And even Dave Chappelle did a great special about the transgender stuff. So these guys have immortalized themselves, whether it's that little bit or, you know, their entire career. Whereas vanilla comedians, let's say like Kevin Hart or other people, and not to say these guys aren't funny, but what are they talking about? They're not talking about what we really need to hear. And that's what George Carlin did. So the importance of comedy, the importance of art, the importance of expression. Speak your truth. This may be the last day, you know, and as you said, as we take the preciousness of life. And so people, because we were doing some activism down in Santa Cruz, California, and they shutting down the beaches from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. because that's when the corona was really out. And so we know we own our body. We know the land belongs to the people. And so we don't ask for freedom. We exercise our freedom. So anyways, we were down there and we became a little bit targeted. But the point is that there's safety and strength in numbers. And so when you come together, don't feel like you're homeschooling by yourself. There's associations, whether they're a little bit statist, that's okay. Just you're gonna find a few other families and get plugged into the community and start learning the power of homeschooling, which is I'm in charge of my child's education. And even the higher level is my child is in charge, but I'm just kind of a coach. I'm just kind of a protector on the outside to make sure they don't become a statist cult member and a corporate, you know, consumer for life. I want them to think for themselves. Now, if they grow up and they, you know, they want to consume high fructose corn syrup and join the military and that's their choice, well, that's their choice. But I don't think they're going to do that. I think we're going to support them, let them choose consensual relationships, peace. Kids are dreamers. They have a dream. So I would invite you to also start asking your child about their dream, not what they want to do with their life. What is their dream? There's a great interview on Ellen DeGeneres. There's a 3-year-old, and she went viral because her mom was a dancer, you know, a very attractive woman. And the 3-year-old's dancing in the background, and she's doing a little dancing, whatever. And so Ellen, you know, really sincerely, she says, when you grow up, do you want to be a dancer? She says, I am a dancer. Meaning, grow up for what? I'm dancing right now. I'm on the Ellen DeGeneres show. I'm a dancer. So this is the power of you speaking life into your children, is not what you want to be. What is your dream? What do you love to do? What makes you excited? Makes you passionate? What do you care about? What matters to you? Because I guarantee nobody in public school ever asked me that question. I didn't even hear it in college, and probably most of you, your listeners, didn't either, because they have their agenda. They want to get their tuition, cost you $50,000, and now of course the college loans can't be forgiven, unlike a bankruptcy with autos, credit cards. Those are all medical debt, but not your college university loans. So they're trying to enslave people with this false idea of education. And so through these conversations, we're able to see that in education is what you do to yourself to create a good life, which is even the better question is, what is a good life? What do you want to think about when you're 90 years old and you're sitting on your porch, on your rocking chair, and you're thinking about your life, and you're thinking about, you're like, yeah, I did it. In my life, I did it. So whatever it is, this is the thing that you must achieve. You must go for it. Even if you fail, at least you're in the game, you're in the arena, versus being in the stands and commenting and trying to mock people who strive and fail. No, it's living. That is the game. This is the joy. And once everybody finds that in themselves, then they realize, wow, you know, take a walk along the cemetery. Go walk with your kids along the cemetery, not for darkness, and say, oh, what's that person's name? What did they say on their tombstone? What year were they born? What year were they died? What did they pass? And then eventually, without you forcing it on them, they're going to realize, wow, this body has an expiration date too. I'm going to turn into dust too. So, wow, what do I really want? And that's where it's like, well, what do you dream? One of the reasons I'm so excited about education and why I did reach out to Gatto, it was a shot in the dark, because one of my mentors, a very successful man, he said, if you're looking for your purpose, find an injustice on the earth that really upsets you and spend your life trying to correct that injustice. And for me, that was a school system. I felt so wronged in the school system when I heard about Gatto and Charlotte Iserbit and these other people. I said, I knew it. I knew school was a scam. And the only problem is it's compulsory attendance. So there's other schools out there, which I like. There's Acton Academy, Agile Learning Centers, Democratic schools. There's a great film, if you haven't seen it, called Summerhill 2008. It's about a voluntary school in the United Kingdom, been around for 100 years. I just watched it recently again. I try to watch it once a year or so. I cry every time, because here's how the school works. They show up, they say, here's our list of classes. Check the classes that you want to take this semester. If you don't want to take any classes, go outside and play. There's 10 acres. There's a bike ramp in the front. There's musical instruments in the garage. There's a tree out there. Go be a kid, go play, go have fun. And then somewhere around age 10 or 11, sometimes earlier, the boredom and the curiosity of this life gets to them, and they look at their older peers who are like studying, and they're like, I want to take a class. I want to study astrology, or I want to study science or music or whatever. And then once you find something you're interested in, you can't stop the child. They will say, okay, mom and dad, I got it. Get out of the way. I'm going now. And so that's the good news and the bad news, mom and dad, is once you raise the champion child who loves learning, because they naturally love learning, you just kind of hold their hand, and eventually they're going to start running. And they're going to say, Mom, Dad, you're too slow. Got to go. Pew! And then they go off to university or apprenticeship or travel the world or whatever. And you're like, oh, I'm going to miss you guys, right? So it's a fast trip. And so just remember, you have such a short limited of time to be with your child. But it's just a beautiful thing to look at the world from a truthful perspective, which is, I don't know anything. I don't know much. but I'm learning. And from the child's perspective, man, there is no height to what they can do. And if you speak to them and ask them about their dreams, eventually they will tell you, and the more experiences, the better.
Dude, I've said it in the past, and like it's kind of like a Hallmark card type of thing. But you end up learning as an adult, you with children, you end up learning a lot more from your children than than you end up teaching them. You know, they bring you back to nature, to the learning experience, to the innocence of it all, the innocence of life that all of us still, most of us still have. You know, we've held on to it as subconsciously, in maybe a subconscious way, but it's still there. And that's something that that children can do for adults in a great way, is to remind them of imagination and innocence, and how much can be done if we just imagine, like when people talk about, a world where statism doesn't exist. And it's like maybe a long time before we get there, but people go, oh, that's utopia. It's like, we're living in someone else's utopia now. Why can't we have our own? Use your imagination. How would we solve that problem? See, this is what freedom allows us to do, is to explore imagination and to have conversation and figure out what's the best outcome voluntarily between two people, consensual, interaction. And children remind you of that, because they don't perceive the state. They don't perceive authority like that. They question it, for sure. I know that I did when I was young, and I know that I try to, get my son right now to question authority and to ask questions no matter what. If you want to ask a question, he comes up to me and goes, "Dad, can I ask you something?" I go, "Buddy, you can ask me anything." That's literally, I'm like a pre-programmed response. Whenever my son comes up to me and asks me, "Dad, can I ask you something?" And he always does. He goes, "Can I ask you something?" I don't go, "You just did." Huh. I go, "You can ask me anything." That's always what I say. And it's like, okay, not only is that building trust, but that's reassuring to him that asking questions to somebody who, I'm his dad. Yeah, he's got it in his head, oh, Dad says to do something, we got to go and do it. Sometimes it's about safety. It's my job. It's my job to make sure they don't fucking die. And like, you know what I mean? Both spiritually and physically. Like, it's like, you got to bring the spiritual aspect into what I just said, because because it's true as well. But anyways, like, yeah, that's something that I always say to my son. You ask me anything, building trust,
Yeah. Number one, that's a great point. It's a very good subtlety for mom and dads listening, because if you mocked him, like you said, "Oh, you just did," somewhere he's still very vulnerable. His self-concept is still forming, and probably will for the next, 5 or 7 years. But at some point, he's going to know, I'm a strong man. I'm important. I matter. My mom poured into me. My dad poured into me, and I can ask anything. And this is what I love about homeschool kids, because when they are entering a room, they're not like little elementary school kids, even though if they're 10 years old, they walk like they're the giant in the room, because they've been talked with as an adult. They've been in adult conversations. And even though they don't have much experience and they really don't have much knowledge, but sometimes they have insight, and sometimes they have the most powerful truths that come through them. I'll give you a quick story. My buddy has a 5-year-old nephew, and his father was out of town. And so he was like talking to him, "Hey, your father's going to be back soon. And, he misses you. And, don't you love your father?" And the 5-year-old looked up at his uncle, and he says, he was on his iPad. He looked up, he says, "I love myself more." Look down.
Oh my God.
And depending on where you are in self-love, which I'm newly into, but like, I love my body. I love this gift that God or source has given to me. And as a man, I really didn't receive much verbal love from men. But then I found out really strong men, they do express love. And sometimes it's through their actions and sometimes through their words. But men love just as deeply as women, and depending on the situation, maybe more. But it's important that, we're not yearning from outside love as adults, right? Kids are yearning for it because they're fresh and they're new. But once there's an enough love has been demonstrated. Now they can take it. And I just wanted to applaud you for having that safe questioning space for your son, because soon he's going to have some more intense questions, because the world that he is inheriting from us is unbelievable, and there's going to be continually big challenges. So the questions are going to get bigger, and you guys are going to have that continually strong trust bond because of that little subtlety to being a conscious father. So that's really beautiful to share.
Yeah, I want to share what Will just put in. Will Keller, everybody, says, "You can ask me anything and I will never lie to you." These are, for real, like two of the most powerful mantras that you can really pass on to your children, and and teaching them about lying. Like, dude, guys out there, everyone, like, from what I've learned so far in my journey, and like of all this information that I've just absorbed over the years, and of being a father, and even the years of like looking into more natural law principles and everything like that, it just starts to make more and more sense the more and more you look into it. Nearly 100% of the suffering that we're going through now is because people lie. If we can be honest, a lot of the suffering starts to heal. And honesty is a very, very huge remedy, in my opinion. And one of the best ways, to Will's point about "I will never lie to you," that also means that, like, you're telling the kids about telling the truth, and then actually following through with it. Sometimes it can get rough and like hurt their feelings, but hey, like, that's about speaking to them not like they're an adult, but not speaking to them like they're a little baby either. Like consider their feelings, I guess, but like also, tell them about tell them about how it's, the Gospel of Thomas. Anyways, I don't know anything about I'm getting distracted by the chat now. I'm sorry, David. But no, thank you, Will, for saying that. It is a very powerful statement. Very powerful way to speak to children.
This is the point. Yeah, I was just saying, I will never lie to you. And if you don't know, mom and dad, it's so awesome to tell your child, "That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe we can go look it up together. Let's go to startpage.com. Let's go to the library. Let's go find it together." Because now we're overwhelmed with information. So we have to learn. We have to sort through the BS, sort through the propaganda. And even maybe that's one of the suggested readings is Propaganda by Edward Bernays in 1920 or 1928. Like, they were talking about propaganda. But anyways, learn how to search for information. Very important, how to search for information. Who are the trusted sources? One of my trusted sources is James Corbett Report, man. I trust that guy, and he's like a sincere dude and looking for the truth and putting that stuff out there. And he's not perfect, but he's like way more trustworthy than ABC, NBC, Fox, CNN, all of them combined, So that one guy made a huge difference. And because he used the media, just like you and I are co-creating right now, and Will out there, and John, and these great dudes, great men, this is going to last forever, right? Once you put this in IPFS or some other decentralized, technology, they can't delete this. And so this is, I think, the power of speaking truth in media. And they've controlled the television, the newspaper, the radio, movies for years, generations. And now they lost that handle, and they're starting to realize that humanity not only has awakened to their global totalitarian enslavement agenda, but we can name the names, we can point out the figures, and it's going to be crazy in the next 10 years, like how humanity deals with this, because what they did to small business owners the last 2.5 years, oh man, just that, or let alone the children and the vax injuries. I saw a teaser for Plandemic 3 by, I think it's Mickey Willis, the producer, and these guys are throwing it down. So this is where we find safety and strength with each other, that these guys are outnumbered. And as we pull one child out of the school system, the state indoctrination program loses one, and the voluntary world, the voluntary society gains one. And so, like you mentioned, like people try to, shit on the parade and say, oh, yeah, a stateless society will never be. It's like, well, if you and I conduct a cash transaction, if I buy your peaches or apricots with cash, that was a stateless world right there. That was a stateless transaction. Or I paid with some crypto or something. The state was not there, and that's called agorism. And that is how we can just opt out. We transcend the Buckminster Fuller quote. You don't change reality by fighting against it. You got to create a new model that makes the old model obsolete. So it is very helpful and very powerful that, you and your wife are on the same page. And, if someone's listening and your partner or the father of your child is not on the same page, it doesn't help to yell. It doesn't help to scream and call them names. You are basically being called on a solo spiritual journey of compassion, of patience, of faith, of peace, harmony within yourself. Because if you try to go at them, they're going to put their shields up because of all their programming. They're already traumatized and wearing the statism and corporatism and every propaganda piece there. But if you go inside, plant seeds, just like the film, a great film also, the Man Who Planted Trees, 30-minute documentary on YouTube. This guy dedicated his life to planting trees and changed his entire city in the course, I think it was 30 years. Hopefully it doesn't take 30 years for your partner to get on board, but maybe 3 years, maybe 1, 2, but if they're not on board, you want to give little nuggets of information, not overwhelm them. Watch maybe some films that are interesting. The Summerhill film is a really good one because it's a really well-made film, and it's light and it's funny and it's entertaining. It's not too heavy. But trust us, there's a lot of families that are breaking up over this stuff, whether it's the curriculum, the jab, whatever it is. And sometimes you do have to part ways, but that the goal is to have a united family if possible. And you might have to be the leader and plant these seeds of truth with sincere, unconditional love. Have no attachments if they get on the freedom train or not, because you are going on the freedom train. And it gets really difficult with jabs. I know it's a difficult, difficult conversation to have about that. But the point is that you're not alone, and there's a lot of people out there, and these are very common, questions in our consulting, and how to address this. What's the personalized scenario, and what are all the factors? I can't speak from the general conversation, but it's so beautiful that you guys are telling your kids, I will never lie to you. And you're basically saying, I'm the guy that you can trust. I'm the guy you can rely on. When shit gets crazy, you can call me, and I'm going to tell you what I know. I'm going to tell you what I don't know. But basically, anybody else out there, probably not the most trustworthy.
Yeah, I lay it down with I tell my son about, there's a few rules to life that can really help you out if you learn them, now. And I think the first one was to not lie. Don't lie, and I'm not going to lie to you. You don't lie to me or anyone else. Tell the truth, makes things better. It really does. It stops. It really does, so it's very powerful to be kind of influencing people to start telling the truth. And it really does help the world be a better place. It takes away a lot of suffering, like I said before. As far as families, that's great that you guys are prepared to kind of coach, families that aren't on the same page, like mom and dad aren't on the same page. You're prepared to coach that and to help with some strategies and whatnot, because what they're doing is more evil than it ever has been. And it's you mentioned it earlier tonight about the destruction of truth. And that's just, postmodernism 101, that there really is no truth. It's all subjective. Reality is subjective. It is what you make it. Girls can be boys, boys can be girls, men can get pregnant. And it's just like, ugh. Jeez.
Oh
Pump the
man.
brakes, come on.
Oh man.
And
Right, which
there,
is yeah, I was gonna say, which is why the rise of natural law is happening. And I know Will and John Rowland are doing good stuff, and of course Mark Passio and other folks out there, and yourself. And it was like part of my freedom awakening was like, wow, objective truth. Wow, I'm not sure. So I really had to juggle with that for a while, and then I came across, is it ever right to initiate coercion against another person or their property? It's like, no, it's not. Then that's truth. It's like, wow, that is incredible. So these are the things they're trying to delete from the zeitgeist or from complete human consciousness
right,
of these truths, because if they can control the access to these truths, now whatever they say with their media machine and their money printing machine and all these immoral, demoralized humans, mainly politicians, and they just pay them whatever they want, or trap them like the Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell stuff. And
yeah, the bread and circuses.
oh, sheesh, yeah, focus
It's
on
ridiculous. It's
the Johnny
ridiculous.
Depp trial,
Yes,
and
exactly. It's
let
ridiculous. And
alone Maxwell. She's been convicted, and none of the clients have been exposed. So you can see that this justice system is not about justice; it's injustice. The prison system, directly related to the school system. I saw a video of a 4-year-old, maybe it was a 5-year-old, who was being arrested, handcuffed because he wouldn't wear a mask in school. And there's this really nice teacher. We'd really like to help your son. He's so helpful, blah, 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 blah. But you know what? It's escalated. And if you don't leave, we're going to call the cops. And he's like, he can't wear a mask. And so it's like, why are parents participating in the enslavement of their own children? Because they don't know how diabolical the plan is. They don't know how engineered it is. And that's part of our, I think, great work, is to expose it and then provide some solutions, which is to help parents reprogram themselves, deprogram themselves, and then put in the empowering focus, words, phrases. You mentioned some curriculum. I want to mention something about curriculum, and then we can conclude if you want. Curriculum comes from the word course or path. So your child's on their own course, their own path. So nobody knows what their future is going to be except them. So you want to give them the tools for today, going back to your definition of success is a daily thing, which is great, and help them move forward in success today. What do they want to achieve today? So you can buy curriculums out there, but more importantly is the day-to-day, their own personal goals, interests, things what they say they want to do. And one of the other questions is about socialization. If they homeschool, how are they going to talk to people? Well, mom and dad, you're people, and I'm sure there's people around. There's neighbors, there's grocery stores, there's libraries, there's other activities, there's youth sports, there's religious activities, adventures, hikes, meetups. There's a plethora of activities, even by the city and counties. You can go do stuff there, and then you can find your tribe. You can even start your own thing. You can even start your own meetup. You can start your own passion and facilitate and take a leadership role, which I think is the way through, forward, and out. We take a look in the mirror and we say, I'm responsible. And this is one of the things I also coach parents is, if you can get your child to accept that, even if it's just for cleaning their room or washing dishes or whatever, and you can ask them, well, who's responsible for cleaning up your room, or who's responsible for, putting your dishes in the sink? I'm responsible. And then you can start to create this kind of mental imprint, mental pattern. So then with anything, hey, dad, mom, I want a car. Who's responsible to get a car for yourself? I'm responsible. And they take that all away and they take it on themselves like a real man and woman do. At some point in life, we say, I am responsible for my life. And it's better at 12 than at 22 or 32 or 42, where it's like, who's responsible for my happiness or my health or my, dreams or finances or goals or whatever? It's like, no, I'm responsible. And then you get into action mode, you get into solution searching mode, and that's the best place to be. And that would be one of the definitions, one of the applications of an educated man or woman, is they pursue, they seek, and they say, I am responsible.
Yeah, for sure. Responsibility is key. Learning that earlier in life, the better. Being, I know Will likes to say to be response able,
Yeah.
able to
Yeah.
respond. That's a
Absolutely.
brilliant way of breaking down that word. And sometimes we do need to break down words that way. A lot of people new to these methods might see that as being a little silly, and I get it. I was there at one point, but it puts a new twist on your understanding of how these words kind of make sense in a different way, and how they can be used in a different way, and by defining it by kind of just looking how the word is built itself. If so, to be response able. Will taught me about the different types of mindsets. About you want to be do you want to be a responsive mindset or a reactive mindset? So being in a responsive mindset is pretty much the better way to kind of approach things, where you're dealing with, you're responding instead of reacting, which means that you're coming in with it in mind to kind of create a solution. That's the way that your mind is oriented, and that you want to create a solution instead of just reacting, which is kind of like flying off the handle and not really participating in a constructive way. So like it's very important to bring the aspect of response ability, your ability to respond, into children's lives very early on as you can. Even when it's like, hey, those are your toys, maybe you should pick them up and put them away where they go. Hey, where they go. You've been shown. We went through this earlier today. It's fresh. You've been shown. Yeah, you've been shown him, Jameson. You've been shown a million times where those toys are supposed to go when you're done playing with them. I don't understand. Why aren't you putting them away where they go? Think about it, buddy. Where do they go? Okay, where they go. So pick them up and put them where they belong. Because we're not going to live in a house that looks like a tornado went through here. We've done that for the last month. Let's just clean up today. So it was one of those situations where it's like, no, these are your belongings. These are your property. They're your responsibility. And he's 5. That'll carry over into bigger and better things as life goes on. But it's about, getting that in nice and early as appropriate in different ways. About natural law, I'd like to say that, natural law is seriously the biggest thing that you can start teaching your children about, non-aggression and self-defense, consequences of your actions, natural consequences, synchronicities and things like that happen. That's why I said I measure success on a daily basis, because nature will do the rest. When you're lessening the amount of harm that you're causing, nature will do the rest. It'll take care of you. It'll present you opportunities along the way that will better your situation. And it'll make sense to you if you understand natural law, the laws of behavioral consequence, as some people like Mark Passio have drilled into our heads about it, that it's known as laws of behavioral consequence. And again, maybe I touched on it already, but about socialization. No, I haven't. All right. So about socialization, how much socializing do you really, I'm not talking to you here, David. People out there that might be like, these guys, and they're homeschooling and they're so, their kids are going to be weird. Their kids aren't going to be normal. Their kids aren't going to socialize. No, our kids are going to be living in a natural setting where they'll be able to learn according to their own pace, where they'll be able to learn the things that they want to know about without having been forced fed or crammed down their throat somebody else's motives and somebody else's intentions with what their minds are capable of doing. Their socialization will be up to them. They will learn how to socialize based on a voluntary basis and not some force-fed, again, version of socialization that you get fed in a public school system. For instance, when there's a kid at school bullying you, you can't just say, I don't want to go to school because that kid's going to beat me up. They force you to go anyways. That's not socialization. That's not voluntary interaction. That's coercion, and that's wrong. So your kid's going to be weird. No, your kids are the ones that are weird because they're in a nice a nice little box that somebody else constructed, and they're free to roam around inside that box. But is that really freedom? No. So guess again. I really, I don't have very many nice things to say about people that talk so badly about the supposed downsides of homeschooling. It is, to me, something that is just abhorrent when you subject your children to the terrible things that go on in public schools. I went through them for a while, and they still go on today because the same outcome-based education system exists. The same outcome exists with the same processes exist within that system. I am confident when I say that. So I really don't mince my words when I say things like this. And, you know, I really don't think that people have a full understanding of what love really means. And when they put their children through these things, I think that they have a very skewed understanding of what love really is. And if they understood what love really is, they would never do this to their children. That's about as nice as I can put it. You can, if you're a critical thinker out there, you can kind of put together what I'm saying. Anything else, David? I really appreciate.
Yeah, I'll mention something about the socialization aspect of it. Never will your children ever be around everybody who's 10 years old or 14 years old or 16 years old, ever. You won't join a company. You won't be part of an organization. It's only in the schools and the universities. So this idea of only talking with people your age is a false socialization, because true socialization is you're talking with older people, learning, and also with younger people. And anybody with siblings out there, I have a brother who's 4 years older than me, and I was always wanting to learn from him. And so him and his buddies. And so I would learn cool stuff. And then I would tell my buddies, and I would be cool because I learned some cool stuff from my brother. And, you know, like, so, what are they talking about? Or what are they, you know, what's going on over there? So imagine in a voluntary environment where you get to associate with anybody you want, and nobody's forced to be there. Nobody's forced to accept you. Whereas the classroom environment, it is forced. You mentioned the bullying. There's kids committing suicide because of bullying. So if it was all voluntary, and I'm glad some people are doing like a school choice movement and making a move to make vouchers. That's not the solution, in my opinion. It is a step in the right direction. But what you do is you stop participating with the compulsory school attendance policies, and then the property taxes. And this is a whole nother conversation, that these taxes, that even if you paid your house off, you still have to pay the state, 1% or half, or 1.5% to the county. For what? For the schools? Yeah, right. So you can see how the slavery system is directly related to schooling. And if people figured out a strategy to not pay their property taxes and fund their own schools, fund their own fire or security agencies, you could do it with half the cost, half of, if you pooled all your neighbors' property taxes together, then you could opt out and, do something like that. But the point was age segregation. It's so ridiculous. And yeah, the more I hear people try to talk negatively about homeschooling, I really feel bad for them, because I've done such the research and experience and talk with people. And I know for a fact that voluntary learning is better than forced learning by a mile, by 10,000 miles. There's not even close. However, I have found something interesting, which is about 20% of people who attended public schools, government schools, they liked it. So they're like, hey, I like my experience. And so it's like, okay, there's a certain personality type that likes to do what they're told, that, fits right in, a square peg with a square person. And that's fine. If you liked it, that's fine. But I find about 80% of people either hated it or disliked it, wish they could do something different. And you can. And this is the way forward, is understanding that the socialization aspect is always happening. And it's better to be around people who want to be around you, and accept you for your humanity, rather than you're forced to be there. You can't talk unless you're chosen, you
Right.
know, like you pick me. Oh, I hate this. You know, what fun is that? You know, how about you
Right.
just go outside with your own friends and talk with each other? And that's how you learn to socialize, actually in a voluntary environment, not in a forced one.
Right. Yeah. Instead of staring at the back of your buddy's head, who's in the, the single file line or the desk in front of you, raising your hand to speak, asking for permission to go to the bathroom, like you mentioned earlier. Like, these aren't ways to social. This is not healthy socialization. You get an allotted amount of time per day to like have spare time. It's not free time. It's spare time to them. It's a little carrot. It's
Oh,
like the whole bell thing and everything is like it's Pavlovian, and it's also to like train people to be in the workforce, because that's, I mean, I don't want to start off on another tangent here, but I mean, with people out there, start looking into the history of uh, government education, government schools. It's to prepare people for the workforce so they can be tax slaves, wage slaves, however you want to call it. But it's the intent behind it that makes it
that's
so
right. Yep.
disgusting to me.
Yep. And there's been multiple committees. The only one that comes to mind is the Reese Committee, I think in 1952, where there was a congressional committee that looked into it, and they concluded that the foundations were funding it. And if you read Gatto's book, The Underground History, he shows how it was the mega corporations and the military who
Yep.
were funding the foundations. And so this is all by design. And also, one thing about I wanted to say about the only reason to go to compulsory schools for the girls or the boys, generally the boys are going for the girls, or sports, but you can even leave for those reasons. There are situations where if you have a homeschool teen who's an athlete, that you can talk with the coach and you can work out a deal with the coach and say, hey, my son or daughter plays this sport, and they'd like to play, so you can work something out, and like, you know, get it
Right.
all on paper, whatever. They can play sports, or you can start your own like little league, or there's hangouts. If you have a team, generally it's for teenagers, but like teenagers want to hang out with other teenagers. Okay, where do they hang out? And you can go learn how to talk with people, how to befriend people. It's a great book by Carnegie, Dale Carnegie, no relation to Andrew. um, how to win friends and influence people. You say, hello, my name's Dave. How are you? Basic manners. And I have to say that I've designed 20 curriculum framework, not memorization, but just framework in the Facebook group, Homeschool Leader. So you can go look at some of those frameworks. One of them is the manners curriculum, because as your child becomes a young man or woman, then it's up to them to open doors. And of course, in their teens, we can help, get introductions. But ultimately, once they're there, get an interview for an internship, apprenticeship, or job, or volunteer opportunity, then their manners are going to be what lets them get past first base, in terms of like, okay, come work with us, So eye contact, hands, shaking hands, these types of small soft skills, all learnable and never taught in the public school system. So they're in
Yep.
books that have been written years ago and way better than the public school system. So yeah, anybody who's talking bad about homeschooling, I feel bad, but you're allowed to talk about bad about homeschooling. They're just like there's bad public schools. I'm sure there's bad homeschoolers out there, but the ratio is
Sure.
non-comparable. And it's about freedom of choice. It's about personal responsibility and taking a step into your life, and then eventually letting your child have their own life. You are not their master. you are their guardian. You are their steward. You are their protector, their coach, their guidance counselor. You are not their ruler. And, of
Yep.
course, you got to do some stuff when they're toddlers, to keep them safe and change their diapers and such. But the sooner you let go, and it sounds like you're doing it already, James, and kind of let them stumble and question and ask, the better. It's more mental work, for mom and dad, but eventually they're just going to be so strong, and then they'll be contributing to the house, contributing to maybe the monthly expenses or the yard, the gardens, whatever, fixing machines. We need a lot of, guys with good hands. I think lastly here, because so many things pop up.
I know.
Recess, man. We'll come back again when I launch volume 2 of the Gatto project, or the underground history, if you want. But
Hell yeah.
Recess is like 15 or 20 minutes for a young boy. And here we are, 8 years old, sitting for 7 hours. And we get a recess for 15 or 20 minutes, 30-minute lunch. And we're like, we're physical generally. There's 7 or 8 types of intelligences, according to Gardner at Harvard. I think there's, billions or hundreds of thousands of types of intelligences. But anyways, physicality is one of them. So if we're fidgety because we can't sit down, they're going to give them pharmaceutical drugs. And a lot of these times they're being administered or recommended in the schools. And ultimately, they'd love to administer all these jabs, all these drugs in the school. So to leave your child in the school system at this point, I think is very unwise. And even if you can't do it the next week or two as school starts again, 2022, figure out a plan for spring next year, or figure out a plan for next fall, whatever it is. But do not take this lightly, mom and dad, that these predators who run these schools are going all the way with these schools. They're going to try to make it younger ages. You're going to get the curriculum is going to get more crazy. Eventually, they'll probably be doing the sex changes in the schools themselves with the nurses and the doctors. And it's just a cycle. It's so ugly and it's so sad. We got to talk about it. But if we don't talk about it, who is going to speak it? Because they've already showed their hands. They've already showed their hands with the forced jab and the forced mask and the disrespecting of religious exemptions and all these things and medical exemptions. They're going to go for it again. And it's going to be moms and dads who bring freedom back to this country, bring freedom to the planet. And actually, it's going to be a new form of freedom, which is involving self-ownership, total personal responsibility, total sovereignty over our body, our temple. And it is up to moms and dads out there. And homeschooling is one of the greatest things I've ever seen, where you can do it inexpensively, you can do it with community, and you can basically redefine homeschooling as a success strategy, as a curriculum strategy, as a happiness strategy to protect your family, your lineage, your progeny, because we need strong men and women like your kids, James, and listeners and other people out there with children. We need them on the planet in 20 years, rocking it in business, in healthcare, in healing, in music, in art. We need them because we're going to get old and gray in 20 or 40 years. And the cycle continues. And so just like Gatto inspired me and you, James, and many of us, he's passed the torch on to us, and we can pass it on to the next generation. Hopefully we can open it up for media and freedom and intergenerational impact that will never be stopped, because I think that is inevitable. But I think putting forth a great effort is just smart and wise to do, just in case.
Yeah, we are our children's first line of defense as well, and it's like it's time that we step into that role and take it seriously, and open up our eyes to just exactly how the world is behaving, because it's it's about time that we do so, and about John Taylor Gatto, the work that he did, the legacy that he left behind. Bring it back to what I talked about earlier tonight about him being a real hero, let's not let his work be in vain. And let's make sure that we, create a better future, and the same things we did in the past aren't going to lead to that better future. So we're going to start pointing and say, what can I do to change? What can I do to make a better future? And it has to do with our children. So if anybody's interested in hearing more about just how public schools influence pediatricians and parents into medicating their children, I suggest that you attend the Shattering the Illusion conference that's coming up in September, where I will be giving a presentation about that subject. So it'll be quite quite a presentation indeed. It's a very heavy topic, and it's something that a lot of people don't consider. But anyways, David, thank you for your time tonight, man. It's been about 2 hours now. Do you want to tell people where they can go, where they can find you? I'm going to include those links in the show notes so you're just a click away for everyone out there listening. One last bit of advice that I want to give people, actually, this just came to mind. I'm sorry. Come to New Hampshire. Come move to New Hampshire. Be a part of this thing that we're doing up here in New Hampshire. I don't like, so we're talking about steps in the right direction. There are things happening up here that are those steps in the right direction. Homeschool kids can participate in the public school sports and everything like that. It's nothing, no under the table dealings or anything. So it's perfectly well within the boundaries of the law up here in New Hampshire. So, I mean, there's things happening up here that are very beneficial for the homeschooling kids, where if you are worried about socializing, there's co-ops. There's the Free State Project, for Christ's sake, the largest concentration of libertarian-minded people in the entire world that exist in New Hampshire. So come on up here. Just don't go and start changing it for the worse. Make it better. So, anyways, David, give us a shout. Where can people find you?
Yes, I just want to say thank you for the time as well, and producing this, and Will behind the screen as well. DavidJamesRodriguez.com is where you can find me, and some of the links. I mentioned the Homeschool Leader Support Group on Facebook, and homeschoolleader.com. You can email if you have questions about graduating your teenager from Valor Academy or doing homeschool consulting directly. Send me an email, info@gattoproject.com. And I have been to New Hampshire. I've been to Pork Fest 1 year, amazing and very exciting. So, and I did go to one of the beaches they have in New Hampshire, so that was a lot of fun.
What beach?
But I want to say Port something.
Portsmouth?
I think so.
Or Hampton?
Maybe, yes.
Nice.
It was a small beach, and it was pretty good, So, but the main thing is that you want to be around freedom-minded people, and whether it's in New Hampshire or in your local area. I'm now in a county which is pro-freedom to an extent, not like voluntarious like maybe New Hampshire, certain areas might be. But you want to surround yourself away from super statists. Generally, they're lefties, but sometimes righties are just as bad. It's not about the left-right paradigm; it's divide and conquer. So we transcend, but some type of area where there's a culture of freedom and a culture of leave me aloneism. Just leave us alone, and we're going to be good. But if you come after these people up here in this community, there's going to be trouble, and it's not going to be from people initiating it on our behalf. It's going to be, in self-defense. So freedom is it all, is the whole ball game. And then it's, life and love, but nobody wants to be living in love in a jail. Let us be free forever, and let us plant these seeds so that nobody has to go through what we've seen atrocities through democide in the last 100 years. Keep speaking truth. It's more dangerous to be silent at this point. We're seeing people get kicked off of platforms for having a different opinion. Doesn't matter what their opinion is. They're allowed to have strange opinions or different angles or perspectives. So attacking free speech is attack on your free speech. And we've been demoralized for so long, dehumanized for generations. And it's time to remember that you are important. You are significant. Your breath is everything, because we are all part of the human family. And we're starting to come out of the darkness. We're shining our own lights in our own ways, as your team is, James, and my team, and everybody out there. We're all parts of the body of freedom. And, let us take action and apply some of these things that we discussed, and feel free to reach out if you want help. And if not, just join us and put some comments, and keep up the great work, James and Will and everybody there. And thanks for participating and creating the great work.
Thank you, David. Thank you for your work, man. So take care. And I look forward to the next time we get to speak, brother.
Yeah, likewise. Peace and love to you, man. We'll do it again.
All right. Goodbye. Okay, so I have just one bit of housekeeping to do before I call it a night, and because I set this goal for myself to do so. So we're going to do that now. And here we go. So I just want to make sure that I share this before I go. Shattering the Illusion will be a one-day online event about natural law, true anarchy, consciousness, mind control, and the occult. It's going to be on September 24th, 2022. That's just over a month away, folks. And we got a killer lineup of speakers. We're keeping it nice and short this time. It's the first time we're doing it, so it's just going to be one day. We're going to have hard hitting. We're looking for people to attend that are curious to learn more about some of the things that they hear on this show and many of the other speakers. Their productions and everything. So please tune in, and you can go to shatteringtheillusion.info to learn more. We recently just added Vinny Eastwood to the lineup, so we just have an absolutely stellar cast of content creators and public speakers to this event. Natural Freedom League, for all you people watching on the One Great Work Network, Natural Freedom League, they were off this evening. They're preparing for their own conference, which is going to be the Funnel 2 Freedom Under Natural Law Conference. It's their second time around doing this. They did an excellent job with the first one earlier this year, so they're taking another swing at it, and they will not miss. This time they're calling it Convergence. So that's Funnel 2 Convergence, and just by this picture here, it's an absolutely awesome lineup of speakers. And so it's a free online event. You just go to freedomundernaturallaw.com and you'll be able to learn everything that you need to learn about this conference and the speakers there. So, and that's also September. So that's September 10th and 11th. September is going to be a jam-packed month for a lot of people to come out and attend these conferences and to really, make a difference in their own right, to be learning new stuff or kind of looking at stuff they already think they understand in a new light. And I encourage everybody that is looking forward to attending these conferences to perhaps bring somebody who is maybe a little bit of on the fence about some of these topics, or is interested but doesn't know where to start. These types of people out there that could really get their feet wet by attending these online events, and they're completely free. So even if, since they're online, even if you're not able to attend that day, dedicate the time over the course of a couple of days after the conference, or as soon as the work is republished out there to be taken in on your own time, to remember that you wanted to see, Will Keller talk about the ecology of living, or maybe you want to hear some of Joe Murray's music, some of these people. So I think that's it for me tonight, everybody. So I don't know when I'll be back, to be honest. I might be taking a little bit of time off myself, but just be on the lookout, and I'll see you around. But before I go, I want to just give my little tagline that I always give at the end of each show. So it's important that in these dark and desperate times that we consciously choose to do the right thing. Okay? No matter the cost, it's very important to do the right thing. I love you all. Agape and peace.